I like to look at C&P exams as if you're walking your dog, right? There's two types of dog walkers. You have the dog walkers that have a really aggressive pit bull, sometimes even a chihuahua, right? Where the dog is pulling and yanking, and the dog is telling you, this is the path we're going, get over it, right? That's one, the examiner being the dog. There are another type of dog walkers who put their leash on the dog. I don't know, 1 foot, whatever dog trick they got going on the leash. And then the handler is choosing the path of the dog, and the dog is following the handler at that point. And that's how your C&P exam is going to go. It's one or the other. There is no middle ground. It's just one or the other. So if you do not have evidence which forces the examiner to look through your records. Okay, I just say that with quotes. And look through. When I say look through your records, I mean look through what the VA sent them. They are driving that conversation, and they are now asking you, talk to me about your migraines. Talk to me about this. Talk to me about that, because maybe they saw something in your records or a lack of, and they want clarification. That is them controlling the walk, the C&P exam. Where you have veterans on the other hand, saying, hey, I already know my evidence. I can tell you, June of 2024 was probably my 10th or 11th time speaking to my psychiatrist about my mental health. Here are my symptoms. Bam, 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 bam. I'm an examiner, and now I'm like, oh, June 2024, summer, bam, here it is. Here's all your evidence. And the veteran is now in control of that exam. I promise you, the examiner will be like, this is the best veteran ever, because you're essentially doing their job for them, and they will appreciate that. Now, there's some personality in there, right? You definitely don't want to step on anyone's toes, but if you have the evidence, you need to speak about your evidence instead of speaking, well, I think I'm depressed and here's why, and there's nothing in your records to indicate that. You're now allowing the C&P examiner to do that, which comes down to the segue here. Sorry, that was a long segue. There are your good examiners who sometimes here's my definition of a good examiner. If the veteran allows the examiner to drive that conversation and drive that exam, there are examiners out there that will do their due diligence. They're looking through your records. They're going back. On my migraine exam, I had a 1-line complaint, which I had no idea of, from 2011, right after I got back from Afghan. I had no idea that was there. Had that examiner not been good, there's no way I would have been denied, and that's it. No HLR, no possibilities, nothing. That's a good examiner, and it can still happen. The issue is your examiners generally have very, very little experience. What's hilarious to me is when you get a C&P exam in the mail, like through FedEx, it will talk about the examiner, and years of experience of being a C&P examiner is always in there. Every single exam, and I wish I saved them. I'm so mad at myself for not saving those. But every examiner I ever had less than 1 year experience. And I want you to just think about this for a second, right? They're generally going to be young. They just got out of med school. They have school debt. They have a family. They're doing C&P exams as like a side hustle. That's not their primary job, right? They probably work for a practice or something like that. So now you have this person who's has a 95, is putting in overtime hours. They're brand new to C&P exams. They don't even know. They can spell VA disability because they're medical professionals. They just got out of med school, right? Assuming they are a doctor, which they may not be. That's a crazy thought. But they can spell VA disability, but they don't know the process. And so now you have that type of C&P examiner that's just going through the motions and checking off the box. When the VA sends your claim to an examiner, it's like a checklist, right? VA is saying, hey, here's the contract. We're paying you to do this. Check all these boxes. A bad examiner will do the bare minimum for the VA and not do their due diligence. And so it's just, I cannot stand bad C&P examiners. And the reason why bad C&P examiners actually matter is because the VA solely relies on that exam for service connection. If you get a bad C&P exam, The rater's not going to be like, oh, well, that examiner was wrong because of XYZ. They're just going to be like, yep, not service connected, right?
Right.
And so the C&P exam is probably the most important day of your VA disability claim process. I know Jason likes to talk about the $1 million deal. It really comes down to the exam. That is your, put up or shut up type day. That's my thoughts. That's at least my opening line for C&P examiners. I hate them. I don't like them. A lot of them do quit being a C&P examiner and they become medical opinion providers, which is hilarious to me. Because they know they can make more money, and they know that when the veteran sends them evidence, they can now do a full, complete DBQ, right? Because the C&P examiner is limited to the evidence the VA sends them, which is a whole other issue, which is actually the next topic we'll get into. But Jason, what are your thoughts on C&P examiners?
Well, it's I love that you enlightened everybody with that they could be a pit bull or a chihuahua.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's really good. I'd never really, So, I would say that the one thing, I mean, I could sit here and just reiterate everything you said, but the one point that I am going to kind of touch on here is the C&P exam is like the culmination, right, of all of your efforts up until then. And if you didn't do much prep before you get to your C&P exam for your claim, you have a lower chance of having a very successful C&P exam. There's different versions, okay? A C&P exam is not just whether or not you're approved for your claim, right, to get it service connected or get it connected as a secondary or whatever it is. It's not just that. It's getting the appropriate rating as well. And you have to go into this with those two goals in mind. And when you do the footwork up front, and this goes back to that $1 million deal kind of aspect, put the work in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do your homework, read the schedule of ratings, read the DBQs, be invested in the process. Don't just, pick some things out of the air and throw it in a claim and go, we'll see what happens. I hope I get rated higher, because that happens probably more than half of the time, I would say. It's a lot. It's a big number of people just picking things out of the air and just throwing it to see if it happens. Don't do that, right? Take the time and be prepared. The more you put in to the actual claims process, the more prepared you're going to be at the C&P exam. Do not be afraid to bring in notes, print things out, read things, right? Look, we all have bad memories. Some of us have worse memories than others due to service-connected conditions like TBIs and stuff. So don't be afraid to take stuff in writing. And if you feel weird about it, right, because it's a C&P exam, then say something when you first get in there. When you sit down with it, say, look, I brought some notes because I don't want to miss anything. And I have a hard time kind of remembering everything. And I don't want to leave here going, I wish I would have said X. And they'll just appreciate you for that. And that's not a big deal. And they go, oh, yeah, that's fine. They're not going to be like, and the veteran brought in notes. Oh, I can't believe it. That's not, then nobody cares, right? There won't even be anything. Maybe they'll say the veteran seemed prepared. Maybe they might say something like that. Well, good. You're taking it serious, right? So I think that's important. And it does come down to that day, really, for those two things. Being in a position of knowing what is going to transpire from that specific day, that C&P exam, is one, the acknowledgement that your condition is at least as likely, clay shirt, at least as likely as not, right? That it's met that threshold, right? Which is getting you service connected. Then they're going to talk about your signs and symptoms and durations and all of that stuff, which is going to create the rating you are. Are you a 10% or are you a 50% or are you a 30%? So that's going to come from you being prepared, right, and educated, coming in with the information you need. And if you need to read it so you don't forget a word, because believe me, if you forget a couple words or you don't articulate it correctly, all of a sudden you change in the rating schedule with just a couple words in some cases. Now, if it's a musculoskeletal, bend over type of thing, well, then it's based on how far you move, not exactly your words. But things like migraines or mental health, that type of stuff is tell me how you're feeling, or the old GERD, man, boy, did people miss out on that boat. GERD was pretty sweet. So anyway, that's it. Let's move on to the next one, Clay.